Hello all, my name is Evan Abramson, and I'm going to talk to you all about the Microsoft Graph API, the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and adaptive cards. If you're just tuning in now, let me be the first to welcome you to Innovate 2021, and if not, I'm glad to have you back for more. To tell you a little bit about myself, I've been working here as the lead developer at Cireson for the past year and a half, and I've mostly been working on the inner workings of platform cache, but I have also worked in SMP and remote support as well. Now that introductions are out of the way, let's get started. So what exactly is Microsoft Graph? Simply put, Microsoft Graph is the gateway to data and intelligence in the Microsoft 365 or cloud ecosystem. It's a set of APIs that provides a unified programmability model that can be used to access an enormous amount of data. So you might be asking, what kind of data? Well, you can get email messages, calendar appointments, profile information, group information. Really, you can get virtually anything within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. If you're curious, I encourage you to go to the Graph Explorer that Microsoft has released at developer.microsoft.com/graph/graph-explorer. As you can see from the screenshots, there are tons of calls to use, and they've got it nicely categorized for you to try out with their test tenant. If you want, you can even sign in and check against your own data, which is really nice for experimenting and confirming things you might want to pull or post. Each call from the Graph API does require certain permissions or consents that administrators can consent to on behalf of the organization. Some of them require admin consent. Others just require end user consent, so you don't even have to let administrators take a role there. Microsoft documentation is very robust about this in terms of what each call does and what permissions you need and can consent to. So if you'd like to learn more, that would be a great resource to check out. So now that you know you can access all that information, what do we do with it? Well, Microsoft also provides a toolkit for you to quickly integrate some graph calls into your application in an easy to use UI for the end user. As you might expect, this is called the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. The components they created are framework agnostic, and they are fully functional right out of the box. You can view the different components and learn about their capabilities at docs.microsoft.com/graph/toolkit/overview. As you can see, there are a bunch of pre-built components that help you enhance your application. If you've installed SMP version 10.3 or greater, you might recognize the person component to show user presence in the SMP portal, since we added it to that. They also released a playground at mgt.dev where you can play with the code and customize things to your liking. In terms of this presentation, I'd like to focus more on the no coding aspect of things. So I'm going to shy away from the toolkit for the rest of the session, but I felt it was important to at least mention it and let you know that resource is available to you. So what else has Microsoft created to help create a unified experience through all of their applications? The answer to that question is adaptive cards. Adaptive cards are platform agnostic JSON snippets of UI that apps and services can openly exchange. When that card is delivered to a specific app, it's transformed into the native UI that automatically adapts to its surroundings. You can code it in C#, JSON, Node, or virtually any other programming language. Adaptive cards also have a feature called templating, which allows you to create a single card with a single look and feel and inject variables with a JSON payload to change the data on the fly and change what the card is actually showing. Just like other items I've mentioned, at adaptivecards.io/designer, there is a full playground available to lay out your card and test with data. Going to that site, you can rearrange and lay out anything on the card, test with live data. There's a preview mode. There's a drop down to show you what it would look like in the different aspects of the Microsoft ecosystem. It's really actually a great tool to have and to use. I actually use it a lot. This also makes it a natural fit to work with Platform Cache and the OData API that it exposes. Since Platform Cache does expose that OData compliant endpoint that provides data in a JSON format, we can create a single chart and inject our data from Platform Cache to render unique cards without extra overhead. Cherry actually has a great presentation on how to even further customize the Platform Cache and SMP to your liking, so be sure to tune into that presentation to learn more. So what use do we have for adaptive cards? Well, as it turns out, one of the existing add-ins that we have for SMP currently streamlines approval processes using adaptive cards, which makes things much more user-friendly. In the screenshots here, we can see that we have a new hardware request for an IT laptop. In this instance, the adaptive card is rendering right to Outlook with action buttons to either approve or deny the request on the spot. No need to go into the portal, which streamlines the experience for all users, making the application and the process easier to use and saves a bunch of time for everyone. As you can see in the screenshots, the card automatically scales between mobile and desktop applications with no special styling or extra work on our end. In this instance, it looks like Susan's going to approve the request, so she can type in a reason and hit approve immediately. Adaptive cards also have the ability to update themselves on the fly, and this includes every time the email gets opened. As you can see in the next screenshot, the card has been approved and there's no need to take further action. So at a quick glance, opening the email sees that the request has already been taken care of, which again streamlines the experience for end users and analysts. As you can imagine, this is extremely useful to requests that have multiple approvers, as each one can simply open their email to see if the request has been approved or not, saving a bunch of time for all employees. So what else can we do with all this information? Well, for starters, we have Power Automate, which used to be called Flow, if you've heard that before. And this acts as a graph wrapper to execute commands easily without any prior coding experience. Let's say you wanted to create a flow that anytime an email comes in to the SCSM inbox from a VIP, we can post an alert to a Teams channel or perhaps message you directly. So with that in mind, let's do some automation with little to no code at all. Okay, so here you can see that I have two browsers up and I've logged into one of them as Alex Wilbur and the other as Isaiah Langer. Alex is my analyst, so we're going to be using Power Automate to make sure and automate his workflow. So we're going to go to flow.microsoft.com and we're going to sign in and get started. Then we're going to go down to My Flows and we're going to create a new flow and automated cloud flow. Now, if you're anything like me, I am horrible at checking Outlook, but very good at checking Teams. So if I get an email with high importance, I want to send a card to Teams so I could see it right away. And I know it's something I need to take care of. So we're going to name this, whatever we want to name it. I'll call it high importance email. And we're going to search the trigger for email. And we're going to do when a new email arrives. We hit create, and this will automatically log us into our account. Sometimes you have to sign in, but once you're logged in, you can also add a new connection to, so you might want to do a shared inbox that way. For advanced options, we could do to, CC, from, but for me, I'm going to do importance high. Next, we're going to pull some information about the user that sent us the email. So we're going to search for the user profile. And here, as you see, we can click on this. It brings us up a nice list of things and fields we can choose from the previous steps. So I'm going to use the sender to get information from the user profile. If you know what fields you want to pull, you can list them here, but I'm just going to leave that blank for now. Lastly, we are going to send a notification to Teams. So what I want to do is post an adaptive card in a chat or a channel. So this will create a connection to Microsoft Teams, and we're going to post it as Flowbot, post it as a chat to Flowbot. We're going to make sure I get it. And that'll search. And then you see it says adaptive card JSON is here. So now I can go to adaptivecards.io/designer, and we pull up the playground that we were talking about before. Here I get to work with the card. Let's say I don't want to do the picture. I can delete that. I can move and drag this down here. Over here, I can change the styling of this. So I don't want it bold. I want it default. The size will make a little larger. This we shall make bold and extra large. Created is fine. And the body here, we do not need this field. One thing I should mention, we should make sure to do Microsoft Teams to make sure we can see exactly what it's going to look like coming into Microsoft Teams from here. Let's go down to our actions. We don't need this one. We're going to change view to open right to Outlook. So I have a one-click stop to open up my Outlook inbox when something comes. And we're also going, actually for now, we're gonna leave it as view. Now you'll notice when I'm clicking on these, you'll see something that looks like $, curly brackets, and a field. That is the variable that you can inject into the adaptive card when I was talking about templating before. You see in the data editor here, we have the JSON data as title, and that is automatically getting injected here. For Power Automate, you don't need to use these variables. However, I'm going to be using them as a placeholder, and you'll see why in a moment. You'll also notice for something like dates, there are functions in adaptive cards to show different date formats. If I take out the short wording here, you'll see it updates to month, day, year, or there's long to do the full name. We'll leave it as long or short for now because I happen to kind of like that format. So we have the creator name, which is who it's from, the date, the title, and here we'll use, let's say, the body preview. And then we have the action to open up the email right in the card. I can see what it looks like. I can also see what it looks like in dark, should I want to use the dark preview of Teams. So now that I have this, I can come down here and, or I can click this and say copy card payload and bring that into and paste it here. Next, I can come over to the text and replace what I need to replace. You'll notice if I scroll down, here's all the information that we have. And you notice we have another one here called display name, which is the extra step from step 2 that will pull in data from graph. That will automatically inject the data from graph into where we want. So created date here, we're going to take out and delete the text and come down and choose received time. Let's see if I can find it quickly. There. So we choose receive time, and that'll inject the receive time. Coming here, this is where we wanted the subject of the email. And this is where we wanted the body preview of the message. You can also link directly because we have message ID if you want to inject there. For now, I just want to open up my inbox. So now that we have that, we have our first flow. So let's save. And we can see if this works. Going back here, we get a full history of what's going on and what's happening in flow and all that stuff, and we can edit. So now I'm going to go over to Isaiah, and I'm going to send off a message to Alex. I'm going to say, here's my subject. Here's the body of the email. This is super important. And as I said, as our trigger, we have to mark the importance as high. We send this off. And if I refresh here, as soon as I get the email, you'll notice it succeeded. If I click on it, it shows me what steps have run. I can click into each one and see what outputs have been pulled, see what the actual flow are posted to the adaptive cards. And you'll notice in Teams, I have a message. And it's a simple message, adaptive card, showing up. Great, I have a notification immediately. So I can now click on this and open up my inbox. And see that the message is there, which is great. But let's say I don't want to have to go and click on the inbox. Let's say I want to reply inline. So let's go back to our adaptive card. And we're going to add some fields here. We're going to add a text box. We're going to drag that in. We're going to make it multi-line. We're going to set the placeholder to enter, reply. And this is super important. We're going to set it as an ID as my reply, and you'll see why this is important in a minute. But this has to be filled in so you can actually pull that data. We're going to add another action, action.submit. We're going to say send reply, and we'll name this as reply. Okay. So, and I'm going to get rid of this just to make it easier to see. The variable names when I copy the payload data. So now I have a sent reply. Now we can go back into our run history or we can go back into flow and edit. So we're going to edit and we're going to add a new step. We're going to go to Teams and you'll notice there is post an adaptive card and wait for a response. Now, what flow will do in this case is it will actually wait until the user responds to the message that Flowbot has sent using the submit button in the adaptive card. So again, we're going to choose Flowbot and we're going to post in a chat with Flowbot. And we're going to make sure we're going to fill in the recipient. Let this load to me. And we're going to say reply sent. The update message is after you submit it, it will update the card with whatever you put here. And we can actually inject dynamic content. So I'll say reply sent in regards to, and we pull down here and say subject from to display name. And here we can paste in our adaptive card. Now, we don't want to put in the variables here just yet because there is a little bit of an issue where this step won't actually show the data that's getting from it until if you do dynamic variables. So we're going to add a new step first. We're going to click on Office 365 and we're going to say reply to an email. And clicking on this, you'll see it post an adaptive card and wait for a response. And you'll see all the fields that come with it. You'll notice the thing that we named, my reply, should be there. So we can reply with whatever we put on the text to inline to the reply on the flow. The message ID comes from the message ID of the email on the trigger. We can set it to reply to all, whether it's yes or no. And there are also advanced options to say the default importance is normal. You could change the subject. You can BCC people if you want, and other customizations there. Once that you've added this step and you have this variable, we could go back and then change these to what they actually should be. So we'll go down and change this to display name. We'll change this to message received time. Go down and change title, and you'll see why. See that the variables help because I can quickly locate where they are. And we'll change this to body preview. Everything else can stay the same. And then you have that card to render. Once that's added, I don't need this step anymore, so I can delete it. Right? And now we have a brand new flow. So now let's see what happens when the user or Isaiah sends me another high importance email. So I'm going to send an email off to Alex again. We're going to set it to importance. And just to make sure I set it to high and send. So now when I receive this, I should get a new flow. And you'll see it's running. Now you'll see if I click on this, it's actually waiting for the response. You'll see in Teams that I have a new thing with the new card. It shows the message preview, it shows the laptop, and I can add a reply. And I can say, let's say it's all set up. And hit send reply. You'll notice the card updated as our update message. And as if you notice in the right-hand side here, the pop-up says, oh, look, it's all set up. Just come grab it from my desk. So without leaving Teams at all, we've gotten our notification and we've gotten a reply sent off to Alex, and it's all automated. And it's all using Graph and adaptive cards to easily display cards that you want or any other information you might find useful to display. One thing to notice is if I go back, you'll see the run history has now succeeded. And if I click in, It says it sent the reply to the email and it waited 31 seconds for me to respond. If I do click on edit over here, there are some advanced options for each task to set a timeout to, let's say, time out the request and mark the automation as complete if we didn't want to respond to the email and wanted to do something else instead. I should also note that there are premium features for Power Automate that lets you do just simple HTTP requests. They are marked as premium, but let's say you've exposed platform cache as an endpoint or SMP to the outside world or anything else that you wanted to integrate with that just invokes HTTP requests or gets anything. We can do that with the premium features of Power Automate. So as you can see, we can do some really powerful things using the Graph API and some of the tools Microsoft has given us. Hopefully I've got your minds kind of brainstorming with ideas you'd like to implement for your own workflows. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you in the lounge. If not, I hope you have a great day and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thanks.